Let's talk to Lord Malcolm Pearson of Rannoch. And this is a man who made an awful lot of noise about grooming gangs many, many years ago. Back in 2018, this is what he had to say.
If we accept the views of our lead police officer for child protection, of Rotherham's MP, and of the recent Jay and Quilliam reports, we seem to be looking at millions of rapes of white and Sikh girls by Muslim men, only 222 of whom have been convicted since 2005. So, my lords, will the government ask our Muslim leaders whether the perpetrators can claim that their behaviour is sanctioned in the Quran and to issue a fatwa against it? And second, my lords, will the government encourage a national debate about the various interpretations of Islam? Can we talk about Islam without being accused of hate crime?
A very, very good question, and of course a question which has been answered by a piece of the Times yesterday, in which it was revealed that there was a Labour policy document signed off by Wes Streeting around about 2019, in which it said the use of the term grooming gangs should be considered racist and it shouldn't be used. Lord Pearson, very good morning to you. Welcome.
Good morning.
Thank you very much for joining us. You've been involved in this story, obviously, for many years. That speech you made, literally, 7 years ago now, warned of a great many things. None of what you said there was factually incorrect. You asked a lot of good questions, but you could always hear in the background, whether it's in the House of Lords or the House of Commons, a kind of a sort of sneering, a kind of, a sort of wriggling in the seat. People find it very uncomfortable to talk about these things, don't they?
Yes, I mean, I think the Islamists, the sort of radical end of Islam, has invented a brilliant word, which is Islamophobia.
Yes.
And as soon as you just try to talk about Islam, that's all I've been trying to do, is just talk about it and understand it and help us, come to terms with it and root out the whole grooming gang scandal, which must be one of the greatest scandals in British social history.
Yes.
But people would say, you're being Islamophobic. And a phobia is an unreasonable fear of something, whereas it's, as we now see, it's entirely reasonable to fear Islamism. And I do want to separate Islamism, radical Islam, from our peaceful Muslim friends.
Sure.
And the people of religion. They are very different. And
yes.
We've got to attack the one and support the other.
But this is the point that people have made to me this week many times, that why is the Labour Party so frightened of offending the Muslim population? Because surely the mainstream Muslim population would be just as much in favour of prosecuting these rape gangs than everybody else. And if that's not the case, then we need to know why. But if it is the case, then surely the Labour government are being disingenuous by kind of making out that all Muslims think that grooming gangs are okay.
Yes, no, I agree. I mean, I don't... of course, members of the Commons Parliament do have to worry about their vote.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether what you're talking about comes out of a fear of offending the Muslim voters.
Well, yes, but again, surely the Muslim vote, if it's a block vote for Labour, is also not in favour of grooming gangs. Surely not.
Well, you'd have thought so.
You'd hope so.
The real trouble is you can't talk about it. I think I've sent you my remember why can't we talk about Islam?
Yes, I have it.
That's what we've got to start doing.
Yeah,
we've got to start. We've got to start talking, being allowed to talk about Islam without being accused of Islamophobic.
Yeah,
and then we can separate these awful grooming gang people from the rest of them.
Yeah,
I mean, it is not what's often said is. I don't know if I mentioned this, but it's often said Pakistani men is what people who are accused.
Yes.
And that isn't true. The problem is religious.
Right.
It's not ethnic, and it's really awful to accuse our Pakistani men of doing it. They're not the problem. The problem is Islamism. The problem is within Islam.
Do you think it's a religious problem which causes the attitudes that these men have towards white women then?
Yes, I mean, I think, don't forget, one of the things the two most important things that Muslims are supposed to do is to obey the Quran and emulate the life of Muhammad. And I mean, this is no particular criticism of Muhammad, because it was fairly normal in those days, but he did become betrothed to Aisha when she was 6, I think, and he consummated the marriage when she was 9, and I repeat, that's normal in those days, but I think some of these radical Muslims think they're emulating the life of their prophet in what they're doing, or they take that as a sort of excuse for their, terrible behaviour, really.
Right. But what they've done has nothing to do with being betrothed, though, is it?
No, but as I say, Aisha, I think, was... he consummated the marriage when she was 9.
Yeah.
And, so maybe our sort of radical Muslims take this as a sort of permission and example, which they're being good Muslims if they emulate.
Yes. But clearly that doesn't operate for many different types of people who are Muslims, people who call themselves Muslims. I mean, you've got some notes here in which you talk about devout Muslims must obey the Quran. The Quran contains over 100 verses which encourage Muslims to kill or subdue non-Muslims.
Well, that's
apologists say there's a lot of violence in the Bible as well.
Well, there is, but only in the Old Testament.
Right.
I think we've got to separate
right,
the Old. But there's nothing. The New Testament and its founder are entirely good, really. But the Old Testament does have some of this stuff.
Well, the crucifixion's in the New Testament, isn't it?
Well, yes, but
quite violent.
That was a sort of the Roman, legal system, I'm afraid.
Right.
Yes, no, terrible, of course, terrible. But, Jesus was able to rise again on the 3rd day and gave us.
Yeah, but imagine if Christians took that as a kind of metaphor and said, "Well, it's all right, I'm going to crucify somebody on Friday, and then on Sunday they'll rise again." Well, you'd go, "Well, that's mad."
I think they think anyone doing that who wasn't a Christian was trying to persecute. Would have to look at the fact that Christianity conquered the Roman Empire.
Yeah,
and has rightly a hugely important position in the modern world.
Right. And the modern world now, though, for many people, of course, has what would have been Muslim followers in many other countries in the world than there were. I mean, when I was born, Britain did not have very many people in a Muslim community, but now we have a couple of million.
Yes. No, well, I think, yes, Islam is spreading all over the planet. And I think we've got to come to terms with it. Otherwise, I see a future where they do actually achieve the world caliphate.
Yes.
And that will be very uncomfortable.
Yes. And do you think that this particular week... I
mean, unless we talk about it, have this sort of program, but not just with me, but also... That is where we are going. Yeah. We are moving towards... It's a world domination movement, Islamism, like communism was. And we are going towards that if we don't wake up and stop it now.
Yeah. So if we have these conversations, and as we're having now, if the government can understand that they have to change their views and they have to stop being frightened of talking about these things, that's obviously a step in the right direction. But how do you make that happen?
Well, I'll go on banging on about it in the Lords, and I fear the Commons will remain frightened of it because they are frightened of the Muslim vote. And I don't blame them for that. I mean, if I was an MP in, I don't know, Rotherham or somewhere, I'd probably be the same. But I at least in the Lords, have the freedom to do this. It's a small platform, tiny platform, and I'm going to go on using it.
Well, good. Well, we wish you well, Lord Pearson. Well, we'll continue talking about it as well, and so do let us know the next time you're making a speech, and we'll come and see you, Lord Pearson. Lord Malcolm Pearson of Rannoch, who says it's very important to talk about these things. It's always very important to talk about these things. It's what we do here at Talk. It's why we're called Talk.